At first, it felt like compromise, not the dramatic kind, just small adjustments, the kind that don't feel worth resisting. It didn't feel like giving something up. It felt like being reasonable, like choosing the smoother option, the one that kept things calm. They believed they were just being considerate, just making things easier. And ease has a way of feeling like the right choice. They told themselves it was temporary, a way to keep things steady, a way to avoid unnecessary friction. Nothing was demanded outright. There were no ultimatums, no moments that forced a decision, just expectations that formed gradually until meeting them felt easier than questioning them. They adapted without noticing, a little less space, a little less time, a few opinions left unspoken. Each change felt minor, reasonable on its own. If someone had pointed out the pattern, they would have struggled to see it. Each adjustment had its own explanation, its own context, its own justification. Nothing stood out enough to question, and nothing felt large enough to reverse. Adjustment became a skill. They learned how to fit around situations, how to stay agreeable, how to smooth over discomfort before it became visible. It was praised even. They were seen as flexible, easy to work with, low maintenance. Over time, the adjustments stacked, not enough to cause alarm, not enough to justify confrontation, just enough to shift the balance. They began to anticipate what was expected, what would be easier, what would cause less disruption. Choices were filtered before they were spoken, not consciously, just automatically. They noticed how quickly it happened. A thought would form and dissolve before it reached their voice, not because it was wrong, but because it felt inconvenient, easier to adapt than to interrupt the flow of things. Nothing felt taken from them. They gave things up willingly, quietly, because saying no felt unnecessary and explaining themselves felt tiring. There were moments when they noticed the difference in how they spent their time, in what they stopped suggesting, in how often they deferred. It wasn't resentment, just a faint sense of distance from who they used to be. Adjustment still felt responsible. It kept things running. It kept people comfortable. It kept conflict away. Standing firm, on the other hand, felt inflexible, selfish even. So they kept adjusting, not because they were asked, but because it had become normal. Eventually, something shifted, not externally, internally. They struggled to remember which parts had been chosen and which had simply faded. Their days still worked. Nothing was broken. Nothing demanded repair. But something felt narrower, less open, less optional. They still recognized themselves, but only in fragments, in private moments, in thoughts they didn't share. The version of them that spoke freely felt distant, like someone they used to know well. They hadn't lost themselves, not completely, but they had been edited, slowly, carefully, not by force, not by intention, just by responding to what felt easier one moment at a time, until ease became habit, and habit stopped being questioned. By repetition, adjustment had felt invisible at first. There was no single moment they could point to, no line they remembered crossing, just a series of quiet recalibrations. Each one made sense in isolation. Each one seemed harmless. And because nothing dramatic had happened, it never felt like something worth undoing. This story isn't about compromise. It's about what happens when adjustment becomes identity. when flexibility turns into self-erasure without ever feeling like a loss. Because the most unexpected outcomes don't always come from what's taken away, but from what we stop protecting.